Lifebrary, a podcast dedicated to your personal story. A story which is not merely a collection of events, but a powerful chronicle that encapsulates the essence of who you are. Understanding the importance of your personal story is to recognize the significance of your voice in the grand symphony of life. Let's get connected. Well, I guess just starting at the beginning is the way to go. My story today is about secrets, but it ends up good. It ends up being a happy ending, or an ending that's turning into a happy ending. So, my father died when I was rather young. I was 8 years old, and I really idolized him. I mean, I romanticized the idea of him in such a sense that I thought he was the best man alive, and he could do no wrong. Even though some of the things that he did in his life brought about his early death, by not taking care of himself in some ways. But, you know, when you're 8, you don't think of that. You just think, my hero, just left me. And so when you're a daddy's girl or a daddy's boy or a daddy's child, either way, that's tough. It's really tough. And all you can think about is how you miss that person, and there's that gaping hole that just never seems to get filled. And I think children that are young, when they lose a parent, I think that sometimes they spend a lifetime trying to fill that hole. And that could be a whole other topic and a whole other story. But the narrative I always understood about my father was that he was an older father, first of all. I think my mom was 39 when she had me and turned 40 shortly after she had my brother. And my mom and dad met, obviously, then in their late 30s. And he was a year older than her. And so, I mean, nowadays that's not so late to start family, but back in the early 70s it was. So, the narrative that was kind of fed to me, or the story that I had always heard about my father, was that, he married my mom. She had 4 children already, and he really kind of took them on as his own, and provided for the family, was a good provider, and took care of my mom and the kids, and really loved them. And then my mom became pregnant with me. Because as the story was told, is that, he wanted kids so bad of his own, and he just wasn't sure if it was going to happen in his life. And, I came along, and he was so proud, and he was so happy, and it was the happiest moment of his life. And then my mom became pregnant again shortly after I was born, and the Irish twins kind of thing. And so he was named a junior. I was kind of like a junior. There was a play on my father's name that kind of gave me my name. But so that's the narrative. I just always believed, my dad wanted kids so bad, and here we came late in his life, and we were so treasured. Then fast forward, maybe 30 years. And ancestry DNA is a thing, right? So that, you have 23andMe, Ancestry.com, all of those things, and it became popular. So back in 2017, I think it was, I was gifted an Ancestry.com testing package kit. So I did the Ancestry, and spit in the tube, and you mix it up and you send it off, and you just wait for your results, because you just want to find out, hey, has everything I've been told my whole life true, as far as what my heritage is, like, what the ethnic background is of my ancestors or where we came from. So it was really exciting. I couldn't wait. And I get the results back, and I see some close relatives on there, and I don't recognize some of them. My mom was raised in an orphanage and really didn't have any contact with her siblings or any of her family, and never has been. She was raised in an orphanage from a very young time. So I don't know any of my mom's side of the family. I mean, I have names, but never met any of them, and I was only doing, like, a family tree basically. So some of the names I don't recognize. I'm assuming they're from my mom's side, and I've tried to, like, reach out and put the pieces of the puzzle together, but not everybody wants to talk on these apps. So, but there was one person in particular that showed up as a relatively close relative, but it was kind of like in this weird, like, so on Ancestry.com, it'll give you these possibilities of how this person could be related to you, right? So it could have been a first cousin. It could have been a half nephew. It could have been a myriad. I think there was like 10 different listings of how this person could be related to me, but they were relatively closely related to me because my cousin's ancestry came on there, a cousin that I knew from my dad's side, and this person that matched with me was actually higher than my first cousin. So I said, well, okay, is it like a half sibling? And, like, I just didn't know about them. And it's just maybe I know that sometimes, like, that males carry more of the dad's DNA than the females do. So, and this happened to be a male. So maybe it was a sibling. And I said, no, that can't be, because this person's only like a couple years younger than I am. And I'm like, I just don't see that. I don't see my dad as having had a kid and just never acknowledged them or paid attention to them or anything. So, I mean, I was always told he, like, wanted children his whole life, and and thought I was like this miracle that was brought into his life kind of thing, right? So I was just trying to reconcile all of the possibilities and try to think. And I thought, well, maybe it's my uncle's kid, but he wasn't showing up as a high enough match for my cousin. But again, the males carry more of the dad's DNA than the women. So who knows? Maybe this was her half brother and she didn't know it. My uncle has several kids from different women, and my cousin didn't know about some of them till later in her life. So we thought, well, maybe this was just another one of his situations. So my uncle was still alive, and he, agreed to do the ancestry. So we did, and he shows up as this person's uncle, or on the level of an uncle, like a great uncle. And I'm like, okay, so maybe this could still be my dad's kid, but I just didn't see it. So, but even before I thought about all that, I saw this guy sitting in my close relatives, and I really kind of did nothing about it for a couple of years because I really didn't give him much thought. So all of the things that I just said, I hadn't given much thought to that at this point. I just saw this person. I didn't know how they were related, thought maybe it was possibly on my mom's side. But yet when I look at him, he looked so familiar. And then I had a dream about this person, and basically in this dream, I was like instructed, like, hey, you need to look into this further. So I did. And then that's when I started thinking about all those things that I just had said previously. Sorry, my alarm's going off. That's when I said those things that's when I started thinking those things that I had said previously. So I reach out to this person and we start to talk and we're trying to figure it out. And then that's when we did my uncle's DNA. And that's when we, we're really trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together for him. And he has his own story that who knows, maybe he'll tell it someday here, but he has his own story and how he was raised, and he was not raised with his biological mother, and so he didn't have a whole lot of information or reliable information from her. But later in his life, he had more contact with his biological mom, and they've kind of forged a relationship. And he sent me some pictures of her, and I was just dumbfounded. She looked exactly like my aunt, which is my dad's sister. And then I thought, oh my gosh, did my aunt have an affair with my uncle and have a kid that we didn't know about? Because she would have been born back in, I don't know, the 60s, I guess, or maybe even less, maybe late 50s. And so I was like, no, that can't be. My aunt was really religious, and she worked at the rectory for the priests, and she was very involved. I mean, not that religious people can't make mistakes, but I'm just saying, or make choices. Anyway, what I'm getting at is that it just didn't seem plausible, but she looked exactly like my aunt. And then that's when I started really thinking, well, gosh, maybe this guy is my brother and I don't know it. But I finally, at some point, somehow the light bulb went off that that this woman that was his mom was my sister that I didn't know about. And everything that I ever thought about my dad just kind of crashed down in that moment. And I think what hurt even more is that my mom knew about this child and I was never told. And I don't necessarily, if I hold, I mean, yes, I'm angry, but I don't know that it's just my parents were born in the 30s and they came from a time that was just, secrets were just a thing. I mean, everything was so closely held to the cuff, like nobody's hands were shown, like everything was just, you just kept secrets. You just did. And because maybe they just didn't understand like how that would impact anybody or that they would ever come out. Who would have thought technology would come to play in revealing these secrets? And so I originally had asked my mom, hey, do you know how this guy could be related to us? Because, I'm thinking he could be Paul, I'm thinking he could be my uncle's son. I'm thinking all these things. And my mom's like, no. And I said, did dad ever have an affair on you that you know of? And she's like, not that I know of. And I said, did he have any kids that you know of? And she said, no. And then I just kind of let it go. And then when the light bulb went off and I figured out like I'm actually this guy's aunt, I re-asked my mom again, and she's well into her 80s at this point, and she's still alive. And so she said, well, I do remember something a little bit about a girl, and then named the girl's name, and that's my sister's name. And I was just dumbfounded. I was like, Mom, if you know anything else, can you please just tell me, just tell me. Just tell me, because out of everything that I want to do is I want to give my nephew some answers. He doesn't know who his biological father is. He was raised in an adoptive foster family, had a very difficult relationship with his biological mother, who was my sister. And unfortunately, I didn't reach out soon enough because she ended up passing. She ended up passing during all this time that I just kind of sat there and looked at his face showing up as one of my matches. And so I never got the opportunity to kind of maybe try to make things right or help get more answers. And all I want to do for my newfound nephew is just give him some answers, and I want to give him love. And it has been a long road trying to work with him on trying to establishing, like how we were actually related, and we've been working on a relationship and trying to build, and I know it's probably really difficult for him. But I instantly loved him, and I love him. And when I looked at his face and thought he looked so familiar, I happened to find a picture of my dad when he was younger, and I put it side by side with a picture of my new nephew, and it is of when he was a bit younger, and it is identical. I mean, they looked so much alike. And then when I take a picture of him kind of now and put it side by side with my brother, it is astounding, the resemblance. So my dad's family genes are very strong with him, like for physical features and so forth. And they were in his mother, because I've seen a few pictures of her. But having said that, we're finally to the point after a couple of years that we're starting to talk more regularly, and we even have plans to hopefully meet each other very soon. We're talking about that, and I'm so excited. My heart just like, I know I'm crying, but it's just like my heart is bursting with joy at the thought of this. Maybe a little selfishly, because I feel like I'll get a little piece of my dad back, but all I can think about is like just wanting to wrap my arms around this little boy who's not little anymore. He's a grown man, but the little boy that's in him, and just say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you've grown up with all these questions, and I love you, and I will do everything for you to have connection and have a few answers, and to love you the way that you should have been loved all these years. So that's that. Thanks for listening.